underway.
We are ready whenever you are.
All right. The January 27th Improvement Service Committee will come to order. We'll note Alder Weary present, Alder Gerlach, Alder Burnett, and Alder Scannell is excused.
He's on his way.
He's on his way? Okay. And can I have an approval of the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alder Burnett, second by Alder Gerlach. Any changes? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. D, approval of the minute.
Move to approve.
Second.
By Burnett, second by Gerlach. Any changes there? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 1, consideration with possible action on preparing docks at Lake Park for spring fishing tournament to develop costs for extending the steel pile. Report those costs back to committee, referred from January 13th. Director.
Okay, speaking with staff on this, some of this depends on how the work gets done, whether it's bid out or whether we're able to use in-house services, but we are anticipating that the estimated cost to extend those steel piles is probably in the neighborhood of about $25,000. That has not been accounted for in anybody's CIP or bonding request as of today.
Okay. Questions from the committee?
Well, where would that money come from?
Well, I guess we would be looking for some direction from committee on that. It's been a little bit confusing over the years. Generally speaking, we've used the water line as the dividing line. So anything that's on the land side of the sheet piling or the top of bank has typically been a parks responsibility, and then things that are in the water have been a DPW responsibility because we've got the barge and the equipment to put those floating facilities in. I've had some preliminary discussions with Parks Department. We haven't decided anything yet. To me, it makes more sense to have everything under one department. More than likely, I would be leaning towards Parks. And then Parks tells us what they need us to do. If they're simply looking for us to provide the horsepower to get those docks in and out, we can give them the schedules of when we normally do that, and then it would be under their overall control. So in this case, it would be either DPW or Parks. At the end of the day, bonded money is bonded money. If it's levy supported bonding, it all gets paid out of the tax bill. So whether it's my department or Parks Department, it really isn't that big of a deal. Just somebody has to account for it.
Alder Scannell, we're on number 1, and the estimates. No problem. I'm glad you made it. Estimates $25,000, and then we're just discussing how to pay for it if we want to go ahead with it. So.
Yep. Well, we were talking about bonding last time, and I think that's a good way to go. And 25,000 seems pretty reasonable. I think it's doable.
May I ask?
Certainly needed. Yep.
Ask if this is something that you do every year?
Put in the
what
dock?
we're talking about is to extend the height. There's the steel piling, the round tubes that are in the river that the floating docks moor to. The way that they were constructed, they're not tall enough to accommodate the current river elevations. So the couplings that hold the floating docks to the pile float up and over the top of the pile, and then the docks can float away. So what we're talking about is making those pile taller so that the couplings don't slip over the top.
I think bonding's probably in order for this. Anybody want to make a motion to that effect, unless you have another suggestion?
No, I'll make a motion that we proceed with the bonding. It's just really important for the downtown to have our docks in, and with the high waters, it's been an issue. So let's address the issue.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second to that?
A second for discussion.
Okay. Second, Alder Burnett, and then you have the floor.
Yeah, Director Grenier, now, when we bond, ideally, you'd like to see a long-term, benefit of whatever we're bonding for. So these docks will be kept in permanently, or these removed?
Well, this would actually again be for the steel pile that are
Right.
that are in the riverbed. So those don't come out; those stay in all winter, and
Right.
they would have a lifespan exceeding 20 years, which would be the bond period. So
That's
it's
fine.
definitely consistent with our bonding policy.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. That's what I thought.
Alder Gaylor?
So, in my utter ignorance, here we go again. What if I happen to know that there's probably going to be another bonding issue that's going to come up for about $10 million next month, and it has to be done? Now, what do I do? And it's going to be another DPW thing.
Ultimately, that winds up being the decision of the Common Council. Again, much like it runs a parallel track to the budget discussion, and much like the budget discussion, we, staff members, department heads, bring forward our requests for bonding. That goes through an initial review by the mayor and the finance director. Oftentimes, there are adjustments made to what we've brought forward. Then that bond request goes forward to finance committee. It's discussed at finance committee and then ultimately brought up to Common Council. So we would go through that same process.
My concern is, just like every month you just add to the debt?
No, that's why finance committee is holding they typically take on bonding requests once a year.
Okay.
But if I may, what we're doing here is it's gone through our committee and we're for it, but it's still got to pass. It's still not a done deal till it gets through finance and then through the council. So there's plenty more times to whack at this ball.
And you want this done in time for the spring fishing tournament, right?
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
this year.
right.
I thought we had talked there'd still be time to do that last time, correct, Director Grenier?
Again, I believe that to be the case, but
Okay.
we're
Well, that's
kind
good, and
of
that's
at
what
the
we-
mercy of
go on.
finance committee and when they take up the bond request as well.
Mhm.
Come on, Alderdorf. Get that bonding going. All right. Well, there's a motion and a second. No, Alderdorf, did you have any
I
input
was
on
gonna
one?
say, yeah, Alder Gillick, I know this is kind of your first year through this. This is not unusual. And you need to be talking about what are all the things that we're going to be putting into bonding. And then some things will be eliminated. But this one is 25,000, right? Isn't that what we're saying?
Right, that's what this,
Not a big one, not a real big
yeah.
one.
But I know this big one is coming, and also I don't understand if we need this for the spring fishing tournament, when is the bonding going to be approved by finance if it's only done once a year?
Yeah, those are all good questions.
Oh, thank you very much.
We
I
might have some of that money right now, though, right, Director Grenier?
Well, and I believe the bond request is going to finance committee in February. I don't think it's the first meeting. I think it's the second meeting in February. Once the bond request has been acted upon, we don't necessarily need to receive those proceeds, especially for a smaller project like this, because most departments, I know I do keep they're built into my into my construction funds. There's a certain amount of operating capital that we have because we do let projects early in the year, and we got to be able to pay those contractors. So there is some rollover funding from projects that
Slush
we
fund.
bonded for last year.
Slush fund.
No, not a slush fund. Every dollar of it
Oh, no,
is
I
accounted
just
for.
said cough. I cough.
But what I can do, if the finance committee has taken the action the council has passed, so we know that funding is coming in, we can short-term borrow from another project that has cash allotted to it already, and then replenish that money when the bond funds come back in. So it's not necessarily a finance problem; it's a cash flow issue that we need to work out.
Okay.
And for something,
Can I
small
explain
like
one
this,
more
that's not a
thing?
problem.
Sure, go ahead, Alderdorf.
We were supposed to see the bonding, and we had a special meeting set up the first week of January to look at the bonding requests. They all didn't get in. From all the departments have to get together. They all have to get those in order for us to look at them as a whole. But It's right. We will be looking at it in February, and then hopefully it'll come to council in March. It will be okay. The timeline's okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Because when would this project be, Director Grenier? I mean, you have to wait till a little warmer, I would assume, right? I don't know.
Well, we would in the memo that we provided to you at the last meeting, we said any work out there is going to have to wait until after the ice is off the
Yeah.
river. So it would likely be April at the earliest. And if this makes it through the bond request, again, we'd get the work spec'd out and get the funding assigned to it, anticipating that we would be receiving bond proceeds at a later date. So again, it's a cash flow issue that we can definitely accommodate,
Right.
especially something this big.
Well, we do have a motion and a second to include the $25,000 in the 2021 bond request a couple times. Any other discussion on this?
And
Those in favor?
I'm presuming you want us to add it to the DPW
Yeah.
bond request.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Number 2, consideration with possible action on request by HL&H to dedicate to the city of Green Bay all public infrastructure in the Excalibur 3rd edition subdivision. Director.
When we complete development projects, especially residential subdivisions, is the most common one, where the developer is taking over the responsibility for constructing the public infrastructure. That's the development agreements that we bring forward periodically. Once the contractor or the developer has completed all the work and it's been inspected by DPW and found to be compliant with city plans and specifications, the developer then comes and requests to dedicate that public infrastructure to the public. Again, one of the primary reason for doing that, oftentimes developers have relationships. They're not subject to public bidding statutes like we are. They're not subject to prevailing wage requirements like we are on a lot of our projects. And just the timing that it takes for us to follow the procedural, the statutory requirements for us to let a contract, then receive the bids and do the processing. From a timing perspective, a lot of times developers can do that much more quickly. So there is a benefit to them. On a normal project, when the city would design the project, let the project, then we would levy special assessments and the developer has to pay the assessments. If the developer is able to construct it at his cost, excuse me, at a lesser cost than we would have paid in assessments, he stands a chance of doing it less expensively as well. And a lot of times that's what we're dealing with here. So again, HL&H it has completed the Excalibur 3rd edition under a development agreement that was approved by the Common Council. Staff has reviewed all the relevant information and has determined that they have met the plans and specifications. So we are recommending approval of the request to dedicate.
Any questions? Any motions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alder Burnett, second by Alder Scannell. Any discussion on that? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Number 3, consideration with possible action on request by DDL Holdings LLC to dedicate public improvements in right-of-way associated with Donald Driver Way from Kellogg Street to Bond Street and Bond Street from Donald Driver Way to Broadway, including public utility infrastructure, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water main. Director.
Very similar to the last item. This is for the rail yard project, and DDL Holdings entered into a public infrastructure developers agreement with us, and they constructed both the underground and the above ground infrastructure out there. Little bit different than the previous one in that DDL has not completed all of the work, but in order for the housing components that are also being built over there to gain occupancy permits, they have to be fronted on public streets and served by public infrastructure. So we went and we broke the developer's agreement down a little bit and took a look just at the infrastructure components, and DDL has achieved substantial completion of the infrastructure. So we're going to piecemeal this one a little bit. We're going to accept the pavement and the underground utilities first, and then in the spring, summer, when DDL is able to complete the rest of the above ground stuff, some of the sidewalks, the lighting, things of that nature, we'll bring in a request to accept the rest of the improvements. So just due to the scope of the project, this is a much bigger project than a typical residential subdivision. So again, DDL has met the requirements for what they're requesting to dedicate, so staff does support the request.
Motion to approve. Hey, Paul.
Second.
Motion by Alder Scannell, second by Alder Gerlach. Any discussion on that one? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're very agreeable tonight. Oh, and hello, Paul.
Thank you, everybody.
Number 4, report of actions taken by Department of Public Works. Looks like we've granted a few sidewalk builders and some bush and tree trimmer. Any questions from the committee on any of those? Otherwise, we can just receive and place on file.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
Motion by Alder Scannell, second by Alder Burnett. Any discussion on those? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Informational. What do you have for us, Director?
Just a couple of things really quick. Again, we did have a little bit of a snowstorm over the weekend, but staff was able to get out and get on top of that real quickly on Sunday. It was a real good plow event for our folks. We do have quite a few new staff members who are new to plowing here in Green Bay. So getting a couple of these easier storms under our belt so they get familiarity with their routes and using our equipment has been nice. So just wanted to let you know that we were real happy with the response on how things went on the Sunday event. Giving you folks a little bit of a heads up, we are actively in our preparation for bid, so we will have some projects starting to go out for bid within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Trying to get ahead of the curve, staying ahead of some of the other municipalities in an effort to try to keep our costs down, getting engaged with the contractors and getting our work under contract before they do. So be looking for bids on public construction coming through relatively quick, probably within the next 2 to 3 meetings. We do have a couple of streets out there that are part of the proposed program for this year that have other than residential zone properties on them, and those are still levied special assessments for pavement at half of the normal rate. So for those projects that are going to carry special assessments, we will have a couple of public hearings coming up. We're trying to minimize those and run them concurrently if we can, because the public hearings need to be posted a certain number of days in advance, and because of the public participation component associated with those hearings. Historically, we've held those hearings at 6 p.m., so we won't be able to move up those meetings if we have a public hearing. But again, we're trying to minimize that as much as possible.
Alder Burnett?
Yeah, Dr. Grenier, are there any roads that are going to be reconstructed that need water hookup, like new water connection? Think about Hillcrest, Haven.
No, I don't believe we have anything of that nature in this year's program.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Director?
That's it. We do have a couple of older communications that are still hanging out there, but we are diligently working on them. One of them is Alder Johnson. I see he's on the call to develop a comprehensive policy for naming rights and donations and things of that nature. Unfortunately, with Community and Economic Services losing Director Vonk last year, we do want their input on it, and we do have a new director coming on board starting on Monday. So we want to get him involved, get his insights on things, as well as Assistant Director Renier Wig, and then primarily the mayor's office, DPW, and Parks are the other agencies who have most of the input or would likely see those types of requests. So just want to let you guys know we have not forgotten about them. We are working on them. Just some of them take a little bit longer time.
And I appreciate that, Director Grenier. I've actually done some outreach as well with a couple of sort of our industry chat boards where we can communicate with other organizations similar to ours. And unfortunately, I haven't actually been able to get any tangible policy to even give you a blueprint. So I can continue to nose around on that, but just wanted to let you know that I did make that effort. But everybody seems to just have more of a kind of a loosey-goosey approach to how they do it, where there's not actual documented policies, but I'll keep looking.
Appreciate that. If you do find anything, just pass it on.
All right. Any
Motion to receive
questions?
and place on file.
Motion by Alder Burnett,
Second?
second by Alder Scannell to receive and place on file. Discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That carries. Looks like our next meeting's February 10th.
Move to adjourn.
To adjourned.
All right. Adjourn, Burnett, and Scannell. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Boom.
Thanks,
See you.
everyone.
Let's
Thanks,
just-
everybody. Have a good week. See you next week.